Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar for the ALA chapters in the Carolinas. Great to be with you, and Bob Murphy from the Charlotte chapter will open us up with some housekeeping remarks, and then we'll jump right in. Should be a fun topic today, so we're glad you're here. And Bob, whenever I'm thinking we give it to about give another minute or two and start right on the hour. How's your day going so far? Bob's got himself in mute mode. There he is.
Looks like we've got 31 people. We're getting up there, so I think probably another minute or so we'll be ready to go.
Beautiful. I've tried to do all my research on how to present engaging webinars. I think we're all kind of sick and tired of these things by now. So if you're not engaging and good, people tend to tune you out. So I've tried to embrace some of these strategies and tactics to make things, interesting, get people paying attention. Lord knows we've all sat through some really bad webinars, I'm sure, the past year or so.
John, it is hard to believe it's going to be, it'll be a year and a couple of weeks that we've all been working remotely. It's like a whole different world.
Isn't it though? It's almost like we wiped out a year, and you wake up and what day is it? Where my world has certainly changed. I miss being out on the road and meeting with clients and giving talks and going to conferences, things like that. But just doing the best we can under some extraordinary times. So Bob, I think we're ready to roll when you are ready to roll.
All right, sounds good. Everybody, I'd like to welcome you to today's presentation, the law firm of the future. Just a couple of things. I did want to recognize the business partners that are out there, and if I have missed anyone, please forgive me. And we also have John Cerrone from the North Carolina State Bar with us today. We have Jenny Hansen from All Steel. We have Josh Jones from Frankel Staffing Partners. We also have Brittany Larson from Technology Associates, Jason Ryan from Nova Office Strategies, and Ann Wilson from Hub International. So everybody, please welcome our business partners, and thank you all for joining us today. Just a few notes about our presenter today. John Remsen Jr. is widely recognized as one of the country's leading authorities on law firm leadership, management, marketing, and business development. And since 1997, the Remsen Group has worked with more than 400 law firms and thousands of law firm leaders to help them develop and implement long-term strategic objectives to improve cohesiveness, profitability, and sustainability. John's going to be sharing with us plenty of recent collected benchmarking data on how law firms are adjusting to the current situation as we come out of COVID-19 and provide thoughts and perspectives about how law firms are planning for the future. We will discuss firm culture, marketing and business development, training and development, technology, and much more. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome John Remsen. John, it's all yours.
Boy, thank you, Bob. Thank you for that introduction and for the invitation to be with you all this afternoon. And Bob reached out to me a couple of weeks ago and asked about doing a program, and always delighted to work with ALA chapters. And I had suggested we bring along the Raleigh Durham chapter and the South Carolina chapter. So it's great that y'all are here as well. And welcome to today's program. We're going to run about an hour. I have lots of data to share. We've been doing a lot of webinars since COVID hit, and we find folks love the data. So we strive to collect data when you registered. And then through the conference this afternoon, we'll pause for some polling questions. And that's good stuff you can take back to your firm leadership, giving them an idea how firms in our region of the country, the Carolinas, are evolving, adapting to the changing marketplace and the impact of COVID. It's hard to believe it has been a year. And this time last year, things were looking pretty good. January, February, firms were rocking and rolling. And then, boom, it all just came to a screeching halt. And we had to get home and set up to work at home. And I'll share with you some data suggesting we've done that remarkably well. Most law firms have adapted to the work at home situation remarkably well. They haven't lost the productivity. Profitability has not been dramatically impacted as we thought it might be. Of course, we've got the PPP loan factor in there. We'll talk a little bit about PPP loans. Can't cover it all in our hour, but we will cover a lot of stuff. And if you're interested in more, we've been doing a webinar series, and you can go to our website and see the topics, the speakers, handout materials. And if you've got input, I'm always eager to get folks' input on topics for the future and what you like, what you don't like, and how we can make all of these things better. And we're trying to provide that resource to law firm leaders to help through change, through turbulence, through uncertainty. We want to be that resource in a place where you can find community and find resources to be a more effective law firm leader. It's not easy leading lawyers in the best of times, much less when we're dealing with a lot of change and uncertainty. Bob, thanks for that introduction. Many of you guys know me. I've worked with a number of firms in the Carolinas over the years. A number of managing partners from Carolina firms have come to our managing partner programs. And I think, chatted with the ALA chapters up there a number of times over the past 25 years. I love speaking, so I'm out there on the circuit quite a bit. I really want to do some work with the law firm networks, groups like Meritas, Lex Mundi. But that's a little bit about my background. I was an in-house marketer when law firm marketing took off in the mid-'80s, and got my feet wet that way. We've been doing these managing partner forums. Bob mentioned them, and we've now done 28 leadership conferences for managing partners, and our signature event is first Wednesday, Thursday in May here in Atlanta. It's easy for folks to get in and out, and we had to cancel 2020, obviously. We'll probably have to cancel 2021. We'll be making that decision in a couple of weeks, but you may want to check us out. We've got our agenda and past registrants, a lot of information about that program. The managing partners who come love it. They tend to come back. ManagingPartnerForum.org is the website where we house a lot of our resources for managing partners and all the archives of these webinars. And I'll send you a follow-up later today, tomorrow at the latest, that'll include a link to that resource. We're recording today's session, so I'll send you a recording. It's on demand. You can check it out anytime you want, distribute it within your firm if you think it has merit, and some handout materials as well. And then if you have any other questions beyond what we cover, feel free to reach out, email, phone call. And Bob and I were chatting. I'm happy to hang out. We'll end at an hour, right at the top of the hour, 1 o'clock. But I'll hang out. We'll open up the microphones and chat if folks want to hang out for a bit, talk a little bit more. Got a lot of information to share. Ordinarily, we'd encourage people to type in questions as we go, but I'm not going to be able to monitor that. And we did ask if you had questions when you registered, and I'll get to those as we go through the material. So as I'm putting this thing together, and I'm doing a similar program for a couple of ALA chapters in the coming weeks, I thought it might be interesting to shake up my typical future of law presentation and share with you some of the highlights of our virtual conference. We did a virtual leadership conference in 2020. We did it October 1st and had 195 managing partners from around the country, Canada, a number of other foreign countries, come and share and participate. So I'm going to go through our material because I think there's some good stuff there to reflect on. And then my colleague, my partner in crime, Marie Gutfreund, many of you may know through ALA. He's on the circuit there among ALA chapters and speaks at the national conference from time to time. He does these managing partner programs for law firms in New York and New Jersey and has been my co-host on the webinar series. And so he and I got together year end and put together a really fun presentation offering our big, bold predictions for 2021. And some of them are crazy. Others of them have already come to fruition, but we had a lot of fun putting together that program and trying to capture everything we've learned, through 2020, the adjustments, and where things are going as we work through COVID. Start to see a light at the end of the tunnel, but still, return to office, work at home policies are something that a lot of firms are working on right now. Took a pandemic to get everybody out of the office, but there doesn't seem to be a huge rush to get folks back into the office. And we're finding that people are productive, and many people are happy working remotely and don't really want to come back to the office. And so how's your firm going to grapple with that? And have you thought it through? So we'll talk about all these things. So when you're registered, we asked how firms on this call, North, South Carolina, have adjusted to the pandemic. Better than expected, much better. We did about what we thought we would do. This is data we've seen from the beginning. Firms adjusted remarkably well to working remotely and adjusting to the pandemic. That's compelling data right there. We've done okay. This remote working works. We can go more paperless. We can embrace technology and become more efficient. We've done it, and let's keep it rolling and take it what we've learned and pivot forward and anchor these things into our culture. We asked y'all at point of registration, and this was about 51 people registered for today's session. So we've got about 51 folks weighing in on this data specific to the Carolinas. Long-term impact of COVID-19. What do you think, folks? And this has been the number one answer since we came out of the gates. This is accelerating long-term trends. I was reading an article the other day that in terms of readjusting your office space requirements, this is pushed forward to going to smaller offices, more standardized offices, hoteling arrangements, and the accommodation of work at home arrangements. Accelerating these trends. Now, 7% of you, roughly 1 in 8, said we're going to get back to business as usual. I would contend wrong direction. Wrong direction. Let's look forward at where we're going and resist the temptation to claw back to the way things used to be. Because we've learned some things that have made us more efficient and have improved our firm's performance. In terms of accommodating, these remote working arrangements. We did a webinar, had a couple of female managing partners, and asking, how do we build a firm, a culture that attracts, retains diversity? And they talked about flex time. Flex time, something that many law firms were not willing to accommodate. Now, come COVID, post-COVID, I think we're going to see more and more law firms accommodate flex time. But this has been a trend for many, many years. And the consulting firms, the accounting firms have jumped on this. Law firms, as typical, a little slow, but we're coming around to it. And guess what? We've pulled it off. And so I think, remote working should be accommodated going forth. Accommodating the flex time that young people want. And it's not for everybody, but some people thrive and like it and remain efficient and remain productive and remain engaged. I think firms can accommodate that myself. The impact, your investment in technology in the wake of COVID, consistent firms. Yes, we need to invest in the CRM, the document management, the move to the cloud, these sorts of things that are going to make us more productive, efficient. Firms tell us they struggle with training and developing young lawyers working remotely, struggle with retaining the culture, the collaboration working remotely. It can be done, and firms are doing it. It's just different. It's just different. We're relying much more on platforms like Zoom and Microsoft Teams and GoToWebinar. And I'm hearing again and again, anecdotally, from managing partners, some of our most senior lawyers that I never in a million years would have dreamed would have adapted to this are doing quite well, and in fact enjoying it in many cases. it took a pandemic, but you know what? We've adjusted and we're doing okay. How about our demand for office space going forward? And look at here. Now's the time to look at our leases, look at shrinking our footprint. We did away with the libraries a long time ago. But do we need, if we have more people working remotely, do we need all these empty offices? And going to hoteling arrangements, shrinking the standard sizes of offices. Many firms, partners, associates, no different. More group space. So really looking at why do we need offices anyway? Because most of our clients really don't care. It's for our people, the collaboration, the sharing. Some people crave that. And I think we can accommodate all these work preferences if we put our minds to it. This is our first polling. This is kind of my standard polling question just to get you guys used to working it and give us a sense of the firm sizes on today's call. So if you would, vote early, vote often. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, where we have been voting often lately. But firm sizes on today's call, if you would go ahead and register your vote, but only one vote. We've got about 80% of you in, 4, 3, 2, 1. And here's who we have on today's call. Okay, I will keep that in mind as we move forward. And Juan, did I close that properly? I think I did. If you've heard me talk before, we've talked about the tidal wave, the tsunami of change affecting the profession, and COVID is accelerating. What now? Close? Oh, okay. Is accelerating much of this. Globalization and more demanding clients and competition and disruptors. We're going to talk about disruptors a bit this afternoon. Alternative legal service providers, regulatory reform. Take a look at what's going on in Utah and Arizona. And if you take one thing away today, check out what's going on in Utah within their Center for Legal Innovation that's being run by the Supreme Court. Show that to your partners and sit back and wait for a reaction. This is allowing for the non-lawyer ownership of law firms. And who's lining up to file their alternative business structure petitions with the Supreme Court? Not many law firms. It's accounting firms. It's technology firms. It's consulting firms. Most law firms in Utah are waiting around. We'll see. We're going to wait and see how this plays out. Really, I would want to get in on the ground floor of that myself. But take a look at what's going on in Utah and Arizona. This is shaking up everything. And how long before it comes to our jurisdiction? Juan, is my technology, are you seeing the head in the sands? This is the lawyer reaction to all this change. Tends to be, I'm a lawyer. I practice law. This is the way we've always done things around here. If you haven't read Larry Richards' work, you should. But he speaks to the lawyer personality and the risk aversion and the resistance to change and the skepticism. Hey, change is all around us. We got to take some smart business risks and get folks to do things a bit differently and be open and receptive to change. Here's Altman Weil, their 2020 Law Firms in Transition report, talking about law firm resistance to change. Partners are my number one impediment, say most of the managing partners who responded to this survey. My partners who like things the way they were. So I see a lot of this. But having said that, let's move through the intro and get right into it. So we did a virtual conference back in October 1st, 3 hours. And I did it with Uri Gutfreund as my co-host. And we went around the table and talked about all the kind of aspects of law firm management, the traditional ones, marketing, business development, talked a little bit about technology, where firms are going with that. We talked about finance and KPIs. We talked about HR. And what are we learning as we now have been at that time about 8 months into COVID? What are we learning? What are we seeing? What does this mean for the future? We had 195 managing partners weighing in on this data I will be sharing with you. So Uri and I kicked it off, and here's the firm size in this, the data I'll be presenting. And so we started off by observing that 2020 was a crazy, crazy, crazy year. We've learned a lot. Firms have adapted. The traditional law firm is gone. I believe so. And I'm going to share with you some PowerPoint slides from a managing partner out of Ohio who really hammers home some points that got my attention and should get your attention and your firm leadership's attention as well. Strong assertions about what's going on and what a successful firm needs to do to be surviving and prospering. Leadership, leadership, leadership. Here's where you all come in. You are leaders. You are change agents. Help precipitate change within your firm. Bring on the data. Bring on the surveys. Help encourage this change for the long-term success of your firm. Don't just sit back and wait for things to happen all around you. Get in there, pay attention to what's going on, and alert your firm leadership to Utah and Arizona, for example, if you think that's important. So we asked this crowd, what do you think is going to be the long-term impact? And here is a reminder, your answers. Or I'm sorry, how your firm did. We then ask your biggest challenges. We did a little word cloud around this. What have been your biggest challenges the last 3 months? A lot of words, but you can see keeping front and center. A lot about staff and people and employees and culture and connection and engagement. That's been our big challenge. It's the communication, the training, the development. Firms are doing some really creative stuff around this, often involving platforms just like this one, but having fun and trying to make the best of it. But having those practice group meetings, having those regularly scheduled executive committee meetings. Don't let these fly by the wayside just because we can't all be in the room together. They're probably more important now that we're working remotely. So really tune into your people, particularly your people who live alone. Long-term impact of COVID, that's the crowd, the 195. Here's our Carolina crowd. To me, Winston Churchill, never let a good crisis go to waste. Let's learn from this and anchor the good things into our culture, embed them going forward. Let's not lose it. And use this as an opportunity to really pivot forward and roll with the change, the acceleration of change. We talked about marketing and business development. And Terry Eisner, many of you all know from Jaffe. We invited a fellow named John Harity. Oh, what a fantastic managing partner John Harity is. He runs an IP boutique out of Northern Virginia. He's got a twin brother, hence the firm name Harity and Harity. That's his twin. And they are identical. But he's a great guy and cares so much about social responsibility and firm culture in the context of marketing. So, okay, COVID, there goes the whining and dining, and there go the conferences and all the speeches I had planned for the year. But that doesn't mean I just stop marketing. I'm just going to do it a bit differently and shift to more digital marketing, more social media oriented webinars. That's what I've done because I can't have a live event. I'm not out on the speaking circuit, but boy, I've tried to learn how to present a good webinar. And we've been presenting our own webinar series. And I'm a sole practitioner working out of this is world headquarters here, my living room. But if I can pull this off as a sole practitioner, imagine what y'all can do, the collective resources of your firm in presenting webinar series for your clients and other important audiences. Maybe we step up our blog and our social media presence, but we don't quit marketing. We're just doing a bit differently. Client feedback, I think, is a smart thing to be doing all the time. Getting your lawyers calling clients, welfare checks. I have a client out in California. We bought branded dog biscuits and branded catnip. And when they call the insurance adjusters and meet the pets, because everybody's working at home, we send dog biscuits and catnip as to the dog or the cat after that welfare call. Kind of cool, kind of different. So, get out of the box, do some things differently, but don't just disappear. Here's 3 to 4% has been the benchmark, but a shifting in how that's being invested. Before COVID, firms were kind of moving into business development and hiring directors of business development who would tend to coach up the lawyers as opposed to traditional marketing people that might, do the advertising, the websites, the press releases, the branding, things like that. Firms are really honing in on the business development side of things and the relationships our people are building, cultivating with folks in a position to hire and refer. Speaking of culture, we asked this to the 195 people attending that virtual conference, how important is this culture thing? And look at that, 85%. It's really important. It's the glue that holds us together. And maintaining the glue when we're all working remotely has taken a little creativity and it's been a bit challenging, but it's so important if we're running a firm as opposed to a collection of office loose practitioners sharing office space. I'm going to move to your polling question now to ask this crowd if culture differentiates your law firm from other law firms in the region. Yes, it very much differentiates us would be your first choice. Yeah, kinda. Hell no would be your second choice or your third choice. And then, you know what? I'm really not sure. But you guys looks like are drinking the Kool-Aid. Vote early, vote often. 4, 3, 2, 1. And as we look at the results to this, we see that you haven't drank as much Kool-Aid as the folks did back in October, but culture is important. It is the glue that keeps people because they feel valued, appreciated. They're working on fun stuff. They're working with desirable clients they enjoy. The communication, the feedback, the sharing, really, really, really important. And your firm has a culture, whether you work on it or not, you got a culture. And let's address culture proactively. Here's what John Harity's firm's doing. Check out his website. But he's all about social responsibility. Firms are challenged with Black Lives Matter, and do we make a statement on that? I'm getting pressure from some of my younger people to make a statement on social issues, and I'm not comfortable with that, John. What should I do? Well, there's no right or wrong answer. This gentleman, John Harity, has really embedded social responsibility into his culture, all about diversity and inclusiveness. Cool stuff. Check it out. Now, it's hard to change culture of a firm that's been around for dozens of years, hundreds of years. When you're starting something brand new and it's yours, you can have an impact on the core values and the principles and such. Harder to change an existing entity but you see culture at the firm level, at the office level, within practice groups. I'll often step into multi-office firms, and the culture between offices, among offices, is very, very different. And sometimes some of that's good, but there's something to be said firm-wide culture and core values and consistency. And we talked about technology. Boy, technology, that's been changing things for a good while. When I got into this business, we hadn't even heard of the internet yet. And we just had our shoebox size phones. Remember, you had to check them out. And, the old fax machine with the thermal paper. And that wasn't that long ago. Technology changing everything, isn't it? We're spending some big bucks here. But here's our advice to the managing partners on technology: be strategic. So often I observe firms have kind of brought on their technology piecemeal. It's not integrated. A certain partner wants a fancy new software system to support a big case, and so we go buy that and don't fully use it. I see a lot of underutilized technology. Folks aren't trained up as much as they should be on technology that's already in place. So technology's gotten really, really important. You've got to have a good, strong IT director. Perhaps you outsource it. We'll talk a little bit about that. But 8% north of that is the number I'm hearing. And if your investment in technology has not yet caught up with what you pay in rent, it soon will. Widely held predictions that technology will outstrip rent as your number 2 expense item for most law firms. The work at home technology. Who owns that laptop? Who owns that internet service provider? Is the security there? We had a very robust conversation about who owns the technology when people are working at home. Do we rely on people to use their own stuff and use their own internet accounts? Or do we provide them a firm technology and a firm internet account so we can keep a better handle on how this stuff's being used and keep a better handle on security? But technology, this is an interesting question. How confident are you in your IT director? Only 41% say highly confident. So that leaves 6 out of 10 who aren't so sure that our IT director is up for the job. You need to be sure. And we recommend an independent IT audit just to make sure, because most lawyers, most managing partners are not the most tech savvy people. Most law firm administrators, I find, tend to be heavy on HR, heavy on finance, aren't necessarily up to speed on technology as well. But you've got to make darn sure you've got a good, capable IT director who's thinking strategically and making wise investments that are integrating when it comes to CRM and document management and time and billing and all these other things. Client portals. We're seeing more and more client portals. Here's Bob Young. Bob was on one of our panels. He runs a firm in Bowling Green, Kentucky. He used to be the chair of the ABA's Law Practice Division, and he chaired the ABA Tech Show a couple of years ago. Here's what Bob has to say about technology from a managing partner's perspective. If you haven't gone to the cloud, you're late. Firms that went to the cloud adjusted much more readily than firms that hadn't gone to the cloud when COVID hit us. Virtual receptionist, he's big on Ruby. Might want to check that out. The time and billing software, there's a lot of product out there. The suspects, but let's make sure people are using it, getting their time in, capturing it contemporaneously. Lawyers tracking their own time, imagine that. And entering it contemporaneously, imagine that. How many headaches that would make go away for a lot of managing partners and law firm administrators, and taking that office on the go. Now, this is I think a sharp managing partner. His name is John Pinney, Pinney. John is the managing partner at KJK out of Cleveland, Ohio. Their firm is a member of the Meritas Network, one of the more established, long-standing law firm networks. And we invited John, a young managing partner. I don't think he's 40 years old yet, but boy, is he leading. And here's what he had to say. The evolution acceleration, interesting choice of words, has begun. And alternative legal service providers, LegalZoom, Rocket Lawyer, Avo, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of these. John monitors certain alternative legal service providers to try to figure out how they're going to impact his firm. They have a wholly owned subsidiary called Connective Counsel, which they are selling client-facing software to other law firms. So they're innovating and embracing technology. And so here's what John asserts. Alternative legal service providers are here. They're not going away. They're going to become more and more aggressive. Technology, we're going to see more of it. Advancing firms will dominate. So if your firm's not inclined to want to go there, it may not be around in 10 years, 15 years. Here's continues John Pinney. The traditional law firm is dead. Check that. I am on the wrong slide. My slides aren't quite advancing as they're supposed to be. Juan, what are we looking at here? The traditional law firm is dead. Look at that, 30 to 50% reduction in office space, says John Pinney. I don't think he's too far off the mark. Hybrid models, fileless, paperless, cloud-based, centralized administration. Billing is centralized. Intake is centralized. Word processing is centralized. Think of the days when we had the word processing center and you took in your little mini cassette at the end of the day and you got back your manuscripts the next morning. A centralized word processing center. And, you know, more and more lawyers are become very independent here. But the traditional law firm is dead. Technology-based practices will dominate. Long-term implications. That's scary to most lawyers. Doesn't have to be. This could be exciting to entrepreneurs, risk takers, and people who are looking forward to the future and where we're going and the future of law. Lawyers tend to like where we've been, how we've always done things around here. But I think we need to, look at this as an opportunity. Some firms will get it. Some firms won't. So there we are on technology. We came around to finance. We had Bill Sansone, an accountant, Steve Maybe. He's out of Canada, great guy, written a book on law firm KPIs and talk about what's happening with revenue. This again reflects, firms adjusted pretty well. We all got the PPP loan funding. We're all in various stages now of applying for our forgiveness. If you applied for more than $2 million, you're probably getting scrutinized a little bit. And I'm hearing that there's a backlog at the Small Business Administration, not so much within your bank, but at the Small Business Administration, things are really queuing up and getting backlogged. We have some managing partners. If you had to look at one KPI, just one, that you think was the most important one to track at your firm, what would it be? And work in progress, one. Work and whip, making sure the time's getting in, the bills are getting out. And that is an important thing for a managing partner and law firm administrator to be closely monitoring. What gets measured gets done. What gets measured improves. What are we measuring? Is it billable hours? Do non-billable hours count for much of anything? But which KPIs are we looking at? And how do we share the information? With whom do we share the information? I find that many law firms aren't very transparent when it comes to sharing data with associates and support staff and non-equity partners. Maybe a little more transparency. in terms of sharing finances and performance reports. The old dashboard many managing partners have. We tend to think of KPIs as financial, utilization, realization, billable hours, collections, originating credit, WIP, receivable, financial KPIs. I think the more enlightened firms are looking beyond financials at firm building contributions. Concepts like client satisfaction. Is that an important thing to be measuring? I think so. How about employee satisfaction? Is that important to measure? It's been said that happy employees are more productive and more loyal. So I might want to tune into our employee satisfaction. How about associate attrition? That's something that a lot of firms are challenged with, attracting and retaining our young lawyers. How about our diversity statistics? What gets measured gets done. What gets measured improves. So what are we cluing in on? And I think keep your KPIs to a relatively small number, but make them matter. Share them. So people have a sense of what's important to the firm and how well it's doing among these important factors. Expenses shifting, we talked about, to technology, away from office space, and I throw in here more training and development money. Particularly if people are working remotely, to make sure that technology is being used efficiently, people are following protocol, both at the lawyer and staff level. I'm going to skip these. I'm looking at time here. I got 20 minutes. We covered these, but I was going to throw in some. Let's go ahead and run these questions. What the heck? This is one we've talked about, where you're going to be increasing, decreasing expenses. So let's put this one out here. From the list below, click all that apply. Where are you going to increase spending 2021 and forward? Click all that apply. And boy, light voting so far. But now we're up to about 60%. 3, 2, 1, and here's where you all, today's participating firms, are kicking up monies. Good stuff to take to your leadership. And let's flip it around and look at where we are looking to cut. Hang on, I got to hide that and go here. This is my weak point on running a webinar, is these polling questions. And we're going to flip it around and where you're going to decrease your investment in 2021. Click all that apply. And I don't think y'all are going to be surprised when I do the reveal here at where we're looking to shave our expenses. And office space and staff salaries. And that's interesting. We haven't yet talked about, but I think as the lawyers have become a bit more self-sufficient, we're centralizing operations some. We may or may not need as much paralegal and legal assistance support. And so I think firms are, as part of the regrouping, remote working, back to office conversation, will we need as much support staff? And do we let them go through attrition? Or do we, what do we do with support staff who refuse to come back to the office when the health people give us the all clear? I know some managing partners who, you come into the office or you don't have a job. I have other managing partners who feel differently. So some good data to take back. Here's HR. And I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit, folks. But I invited Sharon Abrahams, big ALA person. Most of y'all probably know Sharon. She's out of Miami. And she asked Don Smith to join us. And Don is the Chief Talent and Diversity Officer. We're starting to see that title, by the way, and throwing in inclusion in there at Kroll and Mooring, DC firm. And he's a lawyer, Don. And I thought they were going to talk about, productivity, working at home, and these sorts of things. And they wanted to talk about dealing with toxic personalities and chronic underperformers. And that you as a managing partner, your reputation's on the line if you put up with too much of it. Because it's not fair to the good worker bees who are, maintaining their production, and the good firm citizens who are compliant with the rules and treating people respectfully. And you got a few bad actors here. And so often we put up with it. And this is where Sharon and Don wanted to go. So here's our chronic underperformer, who's, and keyword chronic, we could all have an off year or a bad month, but chronic. And is this okay? And even worse than the chronic underperformer is this guy. Not only not getting out of the box, but distracting others from the race at hand. And are we willing to put up with that? I say no. Sharon and Don, in very powerful terms, said, hell no. Do you have any of these individuals within your firm? We asked the 195. And lo and behold, yeah, most firms have a couple of these folks hanging around. And 7% claim not to have any difficult personalities. Okay. But these folks, Larry Richard, our psychologist friend, will tell us, are so detrimental to your culture. These toxic personalities that drive away associates, drive away support staff, can't get the time in, can't get even close to the minimum billable hour expectation. And we don't see them doing much to improve. These people are a drag on your firm more than you realize. That's what Dr. Larry Richard would say. And if you put up with too much of it for too long, it's going to really have a dramatic negative impact. Both the chronic underperformance and the bad behavior, yelling, screaming, rule breaking, trust breaking. And often it's a partner with a big book of business who gets away with this. And, we get to this conversation at our managing partner programs from time to time, and a managing partner will share, we had one of those people, and she finally just couldn't take it anymore and said, no, we're voting you out of the partnership. Or your choice, we're getting ready to vote you out, but you can choose to resign if you'd like. And tough, we took a hit in the short term, but in the long term, it's really made us a much more cohesive, good firm to work at. What's been the impact of COVID on these bad actors? And it's made them worse in 35% of the cases, and it doesn't make it go away. So here's what Sharon and Don had to say. Rein it in, call it out. And there comes a time at which, there are consequences. And there's a time at which we just can't take it anymore. So we closed out this session. I'm looking at the time. We've got 15 minutes left. We had Uri and myself, and then we invited Jerry Riskin. And if you haven't heard Jerry Riskin speak, it's a treat. He is a character, managing partner of a big Canadian firm before he started Edge International. But we talked about the importance of leadership during these times of change and uncertainty, and how much more important leadership is when, things aren't all hunky-dory and people are looking at you and you're setting a tone, you're setting an example. And if you're checked out or if you're freaking out, it's hard to expect others to remain cool, calm, collected, engaged. So lead by example. And leadership, really, really important. And so we talked about the importance of first taking care of you. And it's been stressful. And are you okay? You know, are you getting the exercise, the diet, the yoga, the meditation, whatever you need to take care of you? First and foremost, take care of you. You have an obligation to your family, to your firm, and importantly, to yourself. And a lot of people are struggling more than they may realize. And we look at the Hanley Hazleton ABA study about lawyer depression, anxiety, substance abuse. That was done in 2016. And lawyers are, you know, up there on the scale in the best of times. And here we got, you know, change and uncertainty. And some people may be struggling. So take care of you, reach out to your people, particularly your people who live alone, your people who may have a house full of kids. And I think in most cases, it's up to the firm administrator to reach out to all the support staff and leave it to your managing partners to reach out to certainly the equity partners just to make sure people are doing okay. The firm cares about them, wants to help them out if they need some help. And tune into your clients. Show empathy. Those welfare calls, those seminars on topics they care about. Don't tune out and distance yourself from your clients right now. Here are 11 takeaways. We've talked about these. Lean forward, tune into your people, figure out how hybrid you want to be going forward as a law firm. And will we accommodate work at home arrangements on a permanent basis? Young professionals have been wanting this flex time for a long time, and law firms lag other professional services when it comes to the hybrid working model. Get a plan. You all know how I feel about strategic planning. Hope and pray is not a good strategy. We need a plan. Tune into the KPIs, get an audit, rethink your marketing dollars and how they're being spent. And, you know, it'll be interesting. ALA's got its conference coming up in Austin in October. Number of my consultant friends think that's maybe a little soon. You know, I'm trying to grapple with our leadership conference, May 5 and 6. I just can't see it happening. It's still on the calendar, but it just may be too soon. And you know, we do want to get back and that FaceTime, that client time, but we don't know quite sure when that's going to be. Here's some resources we have in play. I've got 10 minutes left according to my watch, so I'm really going to run through this next set of slides. And this is what Uri and I presented at the end of the year. We had our champagne glasses, and I think we did this on December 30th. It was our last webinar of the year. So we put a lot of thought into what we wanted to talk about, what we've learned. And so I'm going to go through this real quick in 10 minutes. One word to describe 2020. We tried to assemble a word cloud. I like the last bullet point there. The 6 basic human emotions. How you feeling about the coming year? And can't wait to turn the page on 2020. 74% said I'm happy to be looking to 2021. Boy, I'm hoping we get happier soon. But you know, it's been tough times. Law firms, lawyers tend to look back, precedent where we've been, but we all know, things changed in March of last year. So as we work through COVID, you know, let's come in through a nice, easy landing in terms of where we want to go from here. Our technology, our space, our strategic plan, our appetite for growth. Go look at what's going on in Utah. I don't think it's too far removed from North and South Carolina, this jurisdictional reform. What do you want to just watch it, or do you want to get in on it? I have a client out in Utah who's right there on the ground floor and doing some really exciting things. Young firm, entrepreneurial firm, but really bucking the trend. There's our buddy Winston Churchill again. So turn the page, look to the new year, big, bold predictions. Here we go. Pace of change will accelerate. No doubt about it. Fasten your seatbelts. COVID has accelerated the pace of change. It's already here, but let's ride with change. Let's not buck change. There's that long-term impact slide again we've showed a few times. One great law firm in your town is going to collapse because it hasn't been looking forward. It hasn't invested in technology. It's fragile culturally. And I get called in frequently to once great law firms that are falling apart because the senior lawyers don't want to change and don't want to evolve and adapt. And after a while, the young lawyers decide, I'm going somewhere else. And, when that starts happening, it's hard to reverse that trend. So don't let this be your firm, because you are looking forward to the future and investing and changing and evolving. Consolidation, I think we've seen some deals put on the side in COVID, but as this works its way through, we're going to see more and more consolidation. We can look to our region of the country at the Wombles, at the Nelson Mullins, at the Bradley Arants, at the Burr Formans. They're not going to shut it down, folks. I think as we work our way through COVID, we're going to see consolidation ramp back up, and merger mania will carry forth. Frustrated partners are going to leave big law. We talked about some of the reasons why. Maybe they just don't like big law. They want the work-life balance. They want to come back to Greensboro or Columbia and set up a new practice, doing things a different way. I work with a lot of firms where a group of partners at big law decided to break away, create a boutique, or a couple of situations where it's a sole owner and the firm's now up to 30, 40 lawyers. But it's a big law refugee who said, enough, I want to do it a different way. The lateral market, that's going to heat back up. Boutique firms that stand out from the crowd, stick to their knitting. And this particularly applies to smaller and mid-sized law firms who have a tendency to want to be all things to all people and don't want to declare niches. I think they're riches in niches. And be willing to stand out, be different, declare a niche. Look what John Harity's firm did up in Northern Virginia, that example I showed you. He's jumping out from the crowd. And so become recognized as the go-to firm in your self-selected niches. Take a stand. Alternative legal service providers are blowing up everything. If you want a list, John Pinney maintains a list of alternative legal service providers he's keeping an eye on. And you can go to our handout materials for his webinar, and I'll send you the links as we come out of this program for the SPs he keeps an eye on, just to keep an eye on them because they're coming at you. I have another slide from a previous program where one of the speakers whips up a PowerPoint slide and it's got logos from, there must be 5 dozen alternative legal service providers. Some you've heard of, some you've never heard of, but they're coming and they got money and they're coming. Look out for those accounting firms. Look out for the non-lawyer ownership of law firms. It's coming. It's coming. It's here in certain jurisdictions and in other parts of the world. The non-lawyer ownership of law firms. I think culture is something to obsess about. I mean, obsess about. Smart firms recognize this is the glue that holds our people together. And when we go about hiring and recruiting, we want to bring people who are compatible with our culture and not disrupt our culture. Culture, really, really important. you all know what the number one word we've asked in, word clouds and such. What word would you describe? One word you would describe to describe your firm's culture. You know what it is. It's collegial. And I would suggest collaborative might be a better word to strive for. Collegial suggests, everybody's happy, and that's great as long as everybody's performing and behaving well, good firm citizens and such. But we're not running a country club. We're running a business. And if we can develop a collaborative culture where we're working towards shared goals, playing off each other's strengths, I think that's a good word. But you see a lot of the same words, family is a big word you see when describing the culture. Getting back to basics, we've heard this again and again, getting the time, getting the bills out, getting paid, and really getting back to the basic blocking and tackling of running a law firm. That's taken on a renewed importance as COVID hits and firms got nervous. But let's not lose that. Let's make sure that we remain diligent. Timekeeping, billing, collections, the basic stuff, intake. That's the moment of truth. Coasting is out, those lawyers who are just putting in the minimum, if that, we're not going to put up with it. We can't afford to anymore. The technology investments paying off big time. We've heard it again and again and again. Man, John, thank goodness we went to the cloud before COVID hit. We landed relatively smoothly, and but for those investments in technology, it might have been a little bit more challenging. So technology, make those investments. Hybrid firms are going to become the norm, not the exception, the norm. Look at Fisher Broyles, biggest virtual law firm in the country. Look at Ramon Law, R-I-M-O-N, Ramon Law, 100% virtual law firms. Look at what Taylor English is doing here in Atlanta. Look at what Hush Blackwell is doing, creating virtual partner tracks. Interesting things going on in this notion of hybrid. These are our fun slides. I said, Uri, let's get out of law. What prediction do you have? And he says, no one's going to be wearing pants. So that was the slide he contributed to support that point. Okay, thank you, Uri. And my prediction was Georgia is going to turn purple. And I missed it. We went blue. And boy, I thought I was going out on the limb by thinking we might go purple. So we had really a fun time with that session. And I hope you enjoyed this one. And good to be with you. I'm going to get you back in here to take us home. If we could, Bob, are you there?
I'm here.
All right. I'm done. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Bob, and thank you, ALA.
Hey, John. Bob
Yes.
Murphy. Just wanted to say thank you, everybody, for joining from the Raleigh Durham chapter, as well as the South Carolina chapter of ALA and our very own Charlotte chapter. John, great presentation. Always look forward to hearing you speak. Just wanted to let everybody know our next presentation will be on March 17th by Paul Meller, talking about memory power, and that'll be a lunchtime meeting once again from 12 to 1. But I know that John's going to keep the floor open for anybody who had questions. So thanks again, John, and everybody have a great day. And if it's sunny where you are, get out and enjoy it. Thanks, everybody.
It's been a beautiful stretch of days here the past 2 or 3. Thank you, everybody. And we'll call an end to the formal program, but I'll hang out, give folks who want to take off and head on to the rest of their days a few minutes to do that, and then we'll open the mics. Hopefully I can do this the proper way. And so attendees, I want to click here and I want to go to, I don't know what I want to do. There it is, unmute all participants. And I'm going to click yes. So if you've got like leaf blowers going on in the background, or barking dogs, or screaming kids, I'm going to go ahead and click unmute now and we usually hear a lot of background noise when that happens. So everybody is unmuted on our end. Unmute all attendees, full audio, and you've got to unmute yourselves on your end if you want to jump in and chat, ask questions. But I'm here to, and I don't see anybody in here, Juan.
John, can you hear me?
Is that Kurt Hanna?
Yep.
I can hear you, Kurt. How are you?
Good. And yourself?
Fine, thank you.
I'm curious how firms are dealing with flat rate matters and timekeeping as it pertains to flat rate. Do they require
we've been reading about alternative fees forever and a day, and there's going to be a wave. It's going to take over, and we're not seeing it. The data does not support it. Billable hour does remain king. Discounted hourly rates are not alternative fees. So it's just, not this revolution and that we've been hearing about for a long time now. It's just not happening. Billable hour still is the foundation and the default way law firms will pay for charge for services. In terms of flat fee, I think shadow billing. So that if you're quoting flat fees, you can do some profitability analysis and shadow it against your standard hourly rates so that you can make adjustments if you're leaving money on the table or losing money on files because you're underestimating the amount of time. So I think the notion of shadow billing, adjusting is important as you get into this. And I think before you jump into it, talk to your clients as to whether or not it's something they want. I've heard a number of firms say, we proposed alternative fees to clients and they just don't seem all that interested. So we've been trying, but I would go chat with your clients about whether or not it's something that they would like to see. And then make sure if you decide to go there, you're shadow billing it so you can adjust down the road.
So by shadow billing, you mean tracking your time as though it were an hourly matter?
Correct. Just so I'm lousy at keeping my time personally. So I'm working on flat fee all the time. And, here's what I'm going to do for you. Here's the scope of services, and here's the flat fee associated with that. I used to shadow bill my time just to see what my effective hourly rate might be. And, once you get the hang of it, things are predictable. And sometimes you'll win, sometimes you lose. But I think I've learned if I go beyond the scope of services under the flat fee, you need to have a conversation early and not just start tacking fees on without a conversation with the client because they think they're getting a flat fee. And I remind them, but what you've asked me to do is far beyond the scope of services under this fee agreement. They're not reading that part of it. They're reading the flat fee and holding me to that. So I've got a client now in California who, we're doing some strategic planning. I had just been out there, spent a full week meeting, come home, COVID, and everything just got pushed to the side. And now we're starting to climb back out of it. And I'm wanting more money because the scope of services has changed and the engagement has become much more protracted. And they're giving me pushback. And I don't want to upset a client, but I do want to get paid. And this project is a lot more than we anticipated when we got into it back in January of last year. So those are the lessons I've learned. Does that get you what you want, Kurt? Is that sort of close?
That's very helpful. We already have flat rate billing. We've had it since day one in certain areas, and then other areas were hourly. So it's
right.
It's a challenge to manage both. It would almost be easier to have either or on all matters, but it's just impossible. And so
I can see that, and it does tend to vary by practice, by client type, by industry. in
Our
terms of where
commercial
you
real
go
estate
flat
tends to
fee,
be.
where you go retainer, where you go blended rate, where you go, discounted rate with a kicker, whatever. There's a group out of Chicago called the Valorum Law Group, and they propose 17 different alternative fee arrangements. They used to have them all on their website with a brief description, but interesting. Anybody else? Most of you guys are muted as I look through the room here. But if you want to jump in, ask questions, or just share thoughts, please do. Thank you, Kurt, by the way, for jumping in there. We've got still about 20 people, it looks like, on the call. Anybody? Let me go to our little questions feature. And I didn't see much in the way of typed in questions from our audience. So
I do have a question.
yes, ma'am. Is that Diane?
It is. It's Diane Talbot in Columbia, South Carolina. When you have an old school attorney who's struggling with technology, but does want to get there, do you have examples of roadmaps to help? For example, baby steps versus big bang, mentors?
Not big bang. Baby
That's
steps.
kind of what I thought.
Baby steps, I think. And the fact that you've got a senior lawyer that wants to learn is, boy, that's half the battle.
Oh, yeah, that right. Yeah.
And what are we talking about specifically in terms of quote technology that covers so many things?
Yes, it does. So really the basics of electronic files versus paper files, litigation type attorneys.
Mm-hmm. There are, I'm sure you could get one of your vendors to come in and give you a talk on, paperless office and e-filing and that sort of thing. I'm no expert when it comes to, that sort of topic, but I would, baby steps and, recognize, psychological rewards are really gratifying. Those attaboys can be very motivating to folks. So much online in terms of tutorials. Your IT group, do you have a big group? You might be able to have somebody kind of troubleshoot, mentor. We're hearing that Diane, that a lot of senior lawyers who would never Zoom ever are now loving it. So these senior folks coming around, I can do this. I can do this. It's different. It's not the way I've always done it before, but I can do it. And it took a pandemic. But yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. Keep going. And I find I often use the analogy of learning to ride a bike. When we're little kids, we'd all love to be up on that 10 speed, riding around like blazes. But you know what? You start with a tricycle, and then you go to a little mini bike with training wheels on it. And then you take off the training wheels and you learn to ride that little mini bike comfortably. And then you get a, bigger bike. And I think it's a gradual thing. Baby steps. Walk before you run. Crawl before you walk. Brittany, I see you're mic'd. Are you wanting to get in there? Brittany Larson. All right. Anybody else? I'm looking here. We're down to about 15 people still on the call. Now, Brittany, I saw Brittany, you took your mic off and now you got it back on. Huh?
Can you hear me all right?
Yes, how are you?
Yes, thank you. I was
Were you
actually
trying to
just,
talk and you were having trouble? You had to kind of reset your mic? Is that what was going on there?
well, yes, sometimes when GoToMeeting starts, it has two independent audios, so sometimes I have to flip between two because I have headsets real time. I actually am a partner, so I'm not related to the law firm, but or a law firm. What I just wanted to mention quickly in regards to Diane's statement was that often, because our focus is on strategy surrounding IT, all things tech, and from a perspective, what we see with some of the older demographic or the demographic that's been in law for a long time, often a new technology is doled out and there isn't a process or procedure that's made referenceable and acknowledged constantly by leadership. So we see time and time again that process and procedures don't get implemented, and then people get confused and they revert back to their old processes because they've been so often implemented. So one of the things that we do to help some of our clients is actually implement those processes and, like you said, use vendor support to leverage that and really give those partners an understanding of the necessary training for not only just new technology, but compliance and security, because we have a lot of the partners who don't follow the same rules as the rest of the firm, and it creates overarching issues.
I've never seen that, Brittany.
Not once, right? Not calling out
Well,
anyone on the call.
the training, I see it all the time where firms will buy this fancy technology and hardly use it. And one of the registrants typed in a question about CRM, and there's an area where I see, we're going to go out and buy Interaction and build our database, and lawyers don't populate the database because these are my clients that I'm not sharing with the firm. Or we just don't train people up, and nobody's watching quality control, and misspellings and miscodings, and it becomes a mess really fast if we don't train people up and put someone in charge of quality control, garbage in, garbage out. Forms libraries, there's another example. We should all be working from a similar set of firm forms. And you go into so many, no, these are my forms. These are my forms. Those are Joe's forms, Sheila's forms. No, come on. We're in a firm. They should be our forms. Consistency, intake. And there's another area where, all over the map in terms of how we onboard a new client, open a new file. And, partners do it however the heck they want to do it. And nobody, no, this is the way we open a file here. And we need this marketing information, and we need the conflict check, and we need somebody's got to be watching intake and making sure that's being done accurately and consistently, and we're getting our engagement letters out and getting them paid, getting our retainers paid before we start racking up time to a file. So we're a firm. Policies, procedures. I've been chatting with managing partners about the return to office policies and masking and one-way halls and filling out the self-declaration when you come in. And, who's going to enforce these new policies if we've got equity partners who don't want to wear masks, or equity partners who walk wrong way down the one-way hall? Who's calling that out? I think for the lawyers, particularly for the equity partners, it's the managing partner calling that out and leading by example. He or she must be wearing the mask, observing the protocols, and leading by example. Otherwise, they're just suggestions. Policies without enforcement, rules without enforcement are merely guidelines, suggestions. So that's an interesting conversation firms are having in terms of, health practices within the office. If anyone's been on a doctor visit lately, you've seen the protocols. Stuff they make you sign, and they take your temperature, and they make you go wash your hands. And wow, they're serious about it. And I think we're talking about health and safety, and we have to be serious about these things. Looking the time, we're about 17, 18 minutes after the hour. If anybody else wants to jump in and add to or comment on or ask questions, now's the time. Okay. I think we're done. And so, thank you so much for having me, everybody, and have enjoyed being with you. And I think we'll call it a day. Enjoy the rest of this beautiful afternoon, and hopefully we'll see you in person in the not too distant future, everyone. So with that, I thank you, and we'll see you later.